Yes. Hello, thank you for the introduction. It's really a pleasure that I can present our journal paper here, because how often can you present a journal paper at the conference? It's a collaboration with Eva Zangele, and it's both a survey and a framework. And in this short presentation, we'll focus on the framework. Well, we at RecSys, we're all working on recommender systems, and we all done evaluations. We learned in the recommender systems research community that one size does not fit all. So we have to use personalization, because every person is different, every person has different preferences, needs. We also figured out with the time that we are in different situations. And when we recommend something, it also has to fit the situation. And actually, it also has to fit the right person in the right situation. So we come to the conclusion, well, at the right time, at the right place, in the right way, to the right person. And then slightly later, we found out, well, maybe we don't have to look only at the user, but there are also other stakeholders involved and affected by recommender systems. And also that triggered somehow how we run our recommendations, because it doesn't only have to be tailored to the user, but also we have to consider what other stakeholders need. Now, as it comes to evaluation, it's actually the same. One size does not fit all. But sometimes we tend to forget that, and we try to squeeze into our situation what we already know, or what we've seen that other people have been doing, but it doesn't make it fit, just even if we try. Why? Well, no holistic evaluation scenario exists, because recommenders serve different purposes. It depends on the domain, it depends on the purpose of the specific system, for instance, discovering new items, rediscovering familiar items, see most popular items of a region, and so on. Systems may even serve several purposes at the same time or in a sequence. And as already mentioned, systems typically serve multiple stakeholders and several subgroups of users and subgroups of other stakeholders. So overall, each scenario requires a fitting evaluation strategy. And that's not so easy, because we need to consider many facets in configuring an adequate and effective evaluation setting. So what do we really want to find out? What is the goal? What do we want to get out of this evaluation? What specific thing? What kind of data do we need? Do we have this data? How do we get this data if we don't have it yet? We have a whole lot of metrics. Which ones, when, how, and so on. So actually, a comprehensive evaluation is a very complex endeavor, but we need it on a daily basis. And based on the survey, we came up with a framework that is intended to help in a structured way that we can come up with good evaluation settings. And for this, I have a surprise speaker. I hand over to Eva, who will present to you our framework for evaluating recommender systems.
Hello everybody, I'm sorry that I couldn't make it to Singapore, but I hope you had a good time at RecSys. So my part today will be to briefly walk you through the FEVER framework, the framework for evaluating recommender systems. So in principle, we have two main building blocks in FEVER. And the first building block is the evaluation objectives. So basically the first thing that we have to think about when actually designing an evaluation of a recommender system. So here we aim to define what the actual goal of the evaluation is. So the overall goal, something like we want to increase the user satisfaction, we want to increase revenue, for example. But also thinking about the different stakeholders in the ecosystem, so to say, and keeping in mind that there might be different perspectives on the actual objectives and the recommender system as as a whole. So this is the first building block, the evaluation objectives. And the objectives, they shape the way we design our evaluation. And the way we design our evaluation is what we define in the evaluation design space. So the evaluation design space, I'll briefly walk you through it, is basically a set of choices that we have to make when designing the recommender system. We do not necessarily need all of those, make all of those decisions. Maybe some parts will simply not apply to your evaluation, but the design space should give you a set of building blocks for the evaluation. So the first thing is the evaluation principles. What are my research questions? What are my hypotheses? But also, to which extent do my findings using this evaluation generalize to another data set, to another context? And what about the reliability of the evaluation? What about repeatability, replicability, reproducibility? So this is the first block, evaluation principles. And then there's the experiment type, something that is tightly connected with the objective, obviously. So if I want to check whether I do indeed increase user satisfaction, I might have to talk to users, and an offline evaluation might simply not do it. And the first and actually the biggest part is the evaluation aspect. So the little nitty-gritty details of how we set up the evaluation. What kind of data am I using? What kind of pre-processing will I be doing? But also, how was the data collected? Are there any quality issues or biases that I might introduce? And also tightly connected with the objectives, obviously, how am I measuring whether I'm actually reaching my goals? So we need to define the metrics that we're going to use, and which kind of system are we going to use for the evaluation. And so this is a very, very quick overview of our fever system. And now back to Christina.
Thank you, Eva. So in summary, what is fever? It was a short synopsis of what components it has, but what can it be used for? So it's a structured foundation to configure an evaluation setting. So we really try that it encompasses the required multifacetedness. So not focusing on one thing, so really showing the breadth that's needed. And at the same time being flexible enough to adapt to the evaluation scenario, because every evaluation scenario is different and you have to adapt to that. So there are also two things that it's not a decision tree, so you can't walk through the framework and then do this and that, and then you have your perfect evaluation setting. You don't have to think further. You have to do thinking yourself. And it's also not a checklist, so it gives inspiration what things you further have to consider, but it's not walking through it and then you're completely done. But we really hope that it's a structured way that gives foundation. So as a takeaway, be clear what the goal is before you start an evaluation. Be clear what exactly you want to evaluate. Then, of course, take fever, the framework, and choose the appropriate evaluation setting. And next year we'll read your RecSys paper. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina and Eva, for the presentation. Time for questions. So while we wait for questions, I have one question. So can we use this for, like maybe you mentioned, but I didn't follow or couldn't follow. So can we use it in a multi-stakeholder scenario, like multi-criteria optimization or something?
Yes, it's also flexible for that. We have we're already working on an extension, so that's the pre-release thing. So we're working on an extension that it can really, that it's easier to adapt to that, but it's already based on that you can really take it over.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, so that concludes our sessions for today.